Okay, I will call the October 11th, 2023 Planning Commission meeting to order. First business is to acknowledge that this meeting has been, that the public and the press have been duly notified in accordance with state law. Next piece of business is the approval of the September 13th minutes. Do I have a comments or motions?
Move to approve.
I'll second.
Any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
We do have Mr. Glasser for comment.
Okay. Any opposed? It's actually not, it's not on this agenda typically, but we did receive a request for public comment. Mr. Al Klaus here for public comments. Al, if you want
to. Mr. Kerr respectfully asked to suspend the rules of order. I will explain. After my comments, I'd like to provide everybody with a site map. Where you've seen, it's the same site map that you have some time ago. Would that be okay, please?
Sure.
Okay. Thank you. Al Klaus, 3 Grand Pavilion. This is the 25th meeting since April the 13th of 22 regarding noise ordinance and nuisance. Since our last meeting, we provided you with some videos and documentation regarding the abuse and noise violations from the Sweetgrass Inn. We invited all of you to visit the site to help you better understand the situation. Mr. Tim Amudi was the only person who contacted us for a site visit. Mr. Kerr has previously been to our property twice before. Hard to understand the reason you would attempt to your task at 30,000 feet versus boots on the ground. Our invitation is still open. We are providing you with a not ready for Google primetime map, which illustrates the dynamics of our situation. Respectfully and hopefully, you will allow us time to explain after my comments. We are not the windjammer. We have a well-documented history to not negatively impact the windjammer, full stop. Our livability is negatively impacted by the Sweetgrass Inn. City Council 5/22/18 video. Wild Dunes made numerous commitments to City Council to gain approval of their hotel event center. Their commitments to gain approval were disingenuous and never came to fruition. We respectfully request, as we experience the primetime David Cohen sound check, you envision living in Plat Tract A, Block D, and GP3, which are designated on our map. Please envision trying to experience your screen porch or deck while the event center is in high, low, or medium mode, unable to open your windows, doors from the outside air. When your windows and doors are closed, unable to extinguish the noise from Sweetgrass, even when your TV is on. Unable to sleep at night, after party noise which wakes you up in the middle of the night. Understand what Low Dart committed to as practice. What happened to the principles of accountability? We contend, in an effort to put a square peg in a square hole, decibel levels for the Sweetgrass Inn be equal to a residential neighborhood. Measurement of said decibels be no further than 20 feet from the source. A buffer zone be established between the neighborhood and the commercial property, a setback. In the buffer zone, sound abatement be implemented. Remember, we requested sound abatement 16 months ago of 20. Based on the above, we believe it is imperative to carve out the Sweetgrass Inn from all other commercial properties. Common sense, this is not a one-size-fits-all situation. Their entry into a residential area was more than egregious, and they did it to themselves. It is their behavior which has created this situation, not ours. Regardless of what you call it, a hotel, a cruise ship, a theme park, or an event center, the abuse to the residents is the same, unconscionable.
Mr. Klaus. You only still have 3 minutes, just like every other meeting.
Well, I asked to have the rules of order suspended.
Oh, I thought that was to just put something out. I didn't realize it was
That's
letting
what
you.
I understood too. You asked to distribute a map?
Yes.
You close?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay.
Finish up.
Regardless of what you call it, our livability must not be defined by the low dart cash flow statements. The proposed noise ordinance in your packet will not work for us. Am I allowed to kind of walk them through a little bit of this?
I think that's your 3 minutes. I think it's.
Very good, that's mine, that's fine, very good. Gee. That's why I asked to have the rules of order suspended.
Yeah, if you had asked for additional time, we would have been clear about that.
Thank you. Would you like me to make that draw, are your drawings on there? Okay.
Okay, next item on the agenda is discussion of draft noise ordinance and decibel level presentations. At your last meeting, we kind of talked generally about the task from city council of reviewing the city's noise ordinance. And at that meeting, we kind of heard different theories about including a noise decibel level or not. At that meeting, you decided that it was the prudent thing to do to include noise levels. So you have in your packet today an ordinance that it started with the original draft that was created through the city attorney and generally the Public Safety Committee, worked its way through to council. It has been it has been revised by David, and a lot of what you'll see, in my mind, are kind of technical amendments, things that cleanups about the type of decibel levels we're talking about, the type of reader that we're discussing. So there's that part of it that I think David could walk through, but I guess a big part of what's being suggested here and incorporated here are the actual levels that you all would choose to put into the ordinance. So we thought that it would be prudent, and I think it's a challenge when looking at these things literally in a meeting room, you're trying to decipher what is, what's an appropriate level. What is 75, what's 70, what's 60, what's 55. So David has agreed to kind of put on an exhibition or an exhibit that would let you all hear what various sounds sound like in the room. I think that might be, and we could do it in either order. We could either talk about the ordinance, then kind of hear the levels. I was thinking that it might be useful to hear the levels first, and then go into the ordinance in detail, but we could do it either way. Any preference in order?
Wide open. Go, David.
Let's do a little background explanation or whatever for this before we do this, but just kind of looking through it, and to me, trying to get to an agreement point, I wanted to start with the 55 dB nighttime, and if you look at what I was suggesting changes, again, this is common in other cities that they set a nighttime quiet hours. I think when they were drafting this, they were again focused on the music and a particular event, not a nighttime. And even in our current ordinances, we use terms, reasonable and time of day. So even though that's not really enforceable, and that's been the issue, is setting a dB limit of, and I'm going to say 55 because right now that's what I've got written in there. That may change, but setting a nighttime between the hours, I think it was 10 to 7. Is that? Sorry.
10 to 7 or 11 to 7.
10 to 7 or 11 to 7. Again, we can argue the hours, that seem common. The reason for the 7 a.m. versus 10 a.m. is we're not dealing just music. It's all noise. when you look at even the chart like Doug has, we'll talk about later, I guess, starting up around 7 in the morning, you start having people, start up their cars, move around, noise levels rise. Even in the data we had last meeting from Sweetgrass, it started rising at 7 a.m. That's common. So that's kind of where I went with the 7. Should it be 6? We can debate that. But that was the intent there was, if we're going to go this route, the two things we need to decide are what are the hours and what's the level. The 55 level, that's fairly common. I'm going to equate it to an air conditioning system. This is not the target of it, but trying to figure out is what nighttime level, what is your driving noise level in our communities, and it's going to be people's air conditioning systems. We might have cicadas at the night too or whatever, but generally, I think most of us are familiar with that. You can walk outside your house and hear if your air conditioner is running or not, or if your neighbors. So that was where the 55 level, I actually kind of based it on what's expected of, or what's typical of air conditioning systems. And again, that's fairly common in ordinances. Based on what's available currently in the market, the 55 is reasonably achievable. If you're installing it at least 10 feet from a property line, if you're installing it closer, you put a wooden fence around it, it's still easy to get it below 55. The industry guidelines for, I'm trying to remember what the acronym is, or air conditioning, refrigeration.
HVAC.
HVA people. You see people say they're certified by their organization. They have tons of stuff on noise. That's a big issue in there. So that's, again, a good reason why I would kind of background with them is they've done a lot of testing of what's achievable, what their goals are, and what can be done. And I've tried to kind of base these limits on what the industry is trying to achieve. And again, that's kind of where the 55 came from. That's going down to 50, it's achievable, it's more difficult. 55, again, I went to, if you just take a typical, what you buy off the market today, unless you're buying a really low-end noisy system, if you install it within 10 feet, you will achieve a 55 level. So with that in mind, I can kind of go in and we can set the room to what 55 really sounds like, if that's the next step.
I think that'd be helpful.
Do you want me to read your meter?
Sure. So turn it on. And right now, we're probably over that, so if everybody can try to keep somewhat
Do you
quiet.
want me to turn the microphones off here so that?
It shouldn't matter.
Okay.
Nobody's-
Fifty, 51.
So this is just a recording in my backyard, basically.
Sandy, are you looking at it's on your phone as well?
Yeah,
Are you getting about the same, Suzanne, what are you getting, 51?
Well, I was until you guys started talking.
When I'm not talking, you're getting 51?
It takes a second to settle. It picks up every bit of background noise, so you have to give it a second, or a moment.
So now one of the things,
You were at 50, right before you talked.
50, and Sandy, you were also reading at 50?
48 to 50, yeah.
Okay.
Very close.
So David, just so we're all clear, that would be the nighttime, the nighttime max would be 55.
That would be, yes, so.
So after, and we'll get into this as we get into the discussion, but, and I'm a little confused, we have two different sections. One is maximum decibel levels, and then a second one, raucous or amplified sound.
Sorry.
Oh, yes, he's getting to the,
I was getting to that side. So basically what, just to give you an idea, that's what the background is, just natural sounds in the background. What music sounds like at 55 dB on top of that. And I was gonna just kind of caveat, I kind of had to limit myself to copyright-free music. So the choice of songs is based on that criteria. Oh, let me restart that one. So my first question is, can everybody hear that?
Yep.
Yes.
Yes.
And the first thing you'll notice is it didn't change your noise level.
Correct.
Um, can you let me know when it gets to 55? Still not there? Or?
I'm still right around 50, 51. That's 54, 56. That's 55 on average until I talk.
I know.
Suzanne, you were getting 55?
When everyone would talk, we were kind of averaging around 60.
Right.
And so my mind goes to, I'm sitting out on the back porch with my wife and we're talking. I think my voice is probably going to resonate around 60 or a little bit higher all the time. It's going to carry too. I guess what I'm saying is I'm not sure 55 is the right number,
So,
but I'm not sure how far
okay,
this carries. You were on the other side of the room and I was registering over 60.
and I should have gone back and moved the meter halfway the distance. So because we're in the room, the acoustics are not ideal for this. But basically, sound drops by 6 dB for every doubling of the distance. So if you're measuring at the property line, you're 10 feet from the property line, talking your normal voice, it would register probably about 6 dB less at the property line. When we talk about typically sounds are measured at 3 feet or 1 meter from the source. That's a common, it's not in all, it kind of goes back to when I talked about air conditioning. They measure at 1 foot, not 3 foot. So when you jump from 1 foot to 2 foot, it goes down by 6, 2 to 4. But voices, typically that 60 limit is considered at a distance of 3 feet. So at 6 feet away from you, the level should be around 54, 55.
Okay.
At
Yeah.
12 feet, it's
Drops by 6.
48, yeah. So that's kind of factors in, and that makes it a challenge because, and I say in Sweetgrass Inn, if they've got the speakers 100 feet from the property line and they crank it to the point that it's, 55 dB at the property line, it's going to be,
90 at the source.
well, it'll take another 100 feet before it drops down the 6 dB. But it's hard to account. Again, part of it is because the police can't enter the property line becomes the typical place to measure sound, but it's going to vary depending on how far the speaker is from the property line. I tried to kind of assume kind of a worst case 10 foot when I was kind of going through this, that whatever the sound source would be at least 10 feet from a property line. And what level would it be at the property line?
So David, in your mind, if Sandy is on his porch, it's 10 o'clock at night, he's talking, is that you don't think that should hit 55, right? 55?
No, it shouldn't.
Should
If
not.
he's yelling and shouting,
If he's talking elevated, or something's,
yeah.
it should, but
If he's standing on his porch,
having a
trying to
normal
have a conversation with his wife who's at the other end of the yard, yes,
Okay.
that would carry. But again, at the nighttime hours is that excessive noise, or should that be considered excessive? I don't think you would get a ticket for it unless you were carrying on for several hours. But again, that's kind of a good judge of, if you're trying to talk to somebody 20 feet away from you at night on your porch, would it be over this criteria? And it would.
all right, so I think, so that's nighttime hours, everybody kind of, I think that was good on explaining that. Is the next, so residential daytime, the old draft had 60 dB, and you've increased that to 70?
I based that kind of on our discussion last week, and again, we can come back and go back, revisit it. Again, when you start looking at, outdoor activities, playing in the pool, sitting outside, again, I think we encourage people, people are now building porches with TVs and stuff on them, even in the residential, that, 60 is going to be hard that seemed to be what I understood from last week. So again, I'm not personally, I'm 60 or 70, either one to me would be fine, but the 70 seemed because from our discussion that that's seemed like a good level. I guess.
So can we do 70?
I mean, is anybody,
No,
I mean,
I'm
could
happy
you
with 70
display
on
70?
residential properties.
Could you display, could
Yeah,
you
we can-
exhibit
Yeah.
70?
Do you want me to turn that back on?
Yep.
CDC says 70 is a washing
phone,
machine,
too.
dishwashing.
Well, I'm gonna bring it all back
A
over here
washing
and sit down
machine?
in my seat.
I don't see a washing machine,
Right
a
next to you.
dishwasher. My dishwasher's really
Uh-oh.
quiet,
Yeah.
but we bought it for that
Right,
reason,
right.
so.
I just wanted them closer.
And then
I feel like that, I
David,
feel
do we
like
have to calibrate this again?
55 was,
what's that?
Does this
louder
have to be
than a washing
calibrated
machine.
again?
No.
Okay.
Testing,
I'm gonna turn the
testing,
mics off.
testing.
I'm gonna turn the mics off.
that's pretty.
residential daytime. Thoughts on that?
Little loud.
It was
It's
Little loud?
Between 7 a.m. and 10 p.m., Sunday through Thursday, and until 11 p.m. Friday and Saturday
Is that for,
for rental and residential.
So that was at 60.
Now, like,
David increased it to 70 based on last month's discussion. You all, how do you feel about, did
Well,
we increase it too much? Did we,
the white noise was
50?
50, 55.
right,
So the music would be something, and what was it, that we couldn't detect it over the background? Do you remember when the music was it? We could hear the music, but we couldn't detect it, but it wasn't detectable over
right,
the
it's,
background noise.
yeah, it's about 5 dB, you start hearing it about 5 dB below background. Again, kind of comes into, if it's really windy out or whatever, people are going to turn their, if they're outside, they're going to turn their sound up louder than they would if it was real quiet. I
And the
think
sound
that,
will travel too. I apologize for being late, but I do have a question, since I wasn't here for the background noise and how it affects sound. So if you have a background noise of cicadas at 55 dB and you're playing music at 70 dB, what's the noise level? Is
this,
it combined or?
no, the 70 is going to actually be the driving.
So just be the 70.
Because I had a personal experience since our last meeting, because I took advantage of our last meeting. I was sitting in my home study, and I could hear music. It didn't sound like a radio, said, oh, I wonder if that's coming from the Islander. So I stepped out onto the street and I called our finest over, somebody with a decibel meter. And he came out, told him there, I'm not complaining, this is an intellectual exercise. So they sent just the right guy. And, just with his car idling and the cicadas, this is on a Thursday or Friday evening, it was 55 decibels on the road. And then the wind came, and all of a sudden you could hear the rush of that music. It got to about 65 decibels. And it wasn't.
You're hundreds of feet away.
Oh, yeah.
You're
I'm
quarter mile.
Quarter mile at least. And the officer happens to be a DJ when he's not an officer.
Awesome.
He
So
couldn't hear a thing.
No, we were able to
Yeah.
talk, we were able to talk about it. And, how wind does affect noise and how you hear it, because it'll move noise, move sound. And I wasn't perturbed by the music, less so than what Dave played for us.
Aw.
Oh. But I'm easily disturbed by music that's not mine, as we all are. But,
So that was 65.
and I could hear it in
a
my
quarter mile-
house.
A quarter mile away.
So the way I had to look back to make sure, so the 70 applied to residential properties.
Yeah.
So,
and we-
in that situation, I mean, I think that's a good example. We would be, because that was emanating from a commercially used property, we would be
75.
using the 75
Yeah.
limit. If it was 65 at your house, I have to think that it was
Wow.
well above 75 at a
There.
closer residential property, right?
Well,
6 decibels.
halfway between his house and
Yeah.
the source would be about where 75 would show up.
Okay. So, yeah, well off the property. So that would have been a violation if this were in place.
So somebody closer would have had to call.
Well, I wasn't calling to complain, as I kept on
No, no.
emphasizing.
But
to
that's a
the-
good you're right. They would
Yeah.
have, had somebody closer called, they would have taken the reading closer and it would have violated this ordinance.
And we called on music this past weekend that was in broad daylight, and I called, well, it's not the old live, it's just a regular phone number.
Yeah.
And I said, can you send somebody over to ask him to turn it down? And you could probably barely hear me for the music, and I'm in the middle of my yard, not even at the property line, and it was the house that was diagonally cattywampus, as my wife would say. And it was just, they were being loud.
So louder than,
Yeah.
significantly louder than that, you had to kind of shout over the phone.
And it went right away. Say, send somebody and problem solved. Nice neighbors thereafter.
So how do we feel? Went from 60 to 70. What's the kind of mood on if that was the right level, too loud? Was 60 too low? Do you split the middle, 65?
I like 70, and I think this gives the police something, number one, to help residents understand that maybe it's not a problem. I know it's bothersome, but it may be not a problem. We're reading 70, or on the other side, folks, you're in violation. It is a problem at 71. So,
I think it's fine. I think the hardest thing is for those adjacent properties to commercial entities.
Yeah.
Like right on the cusp, not saying in the middle, but right on the cusp.
Right. So you want to leave it at 70 and go to the next one, 75?
Is there a 5 decibel leeway there? Is that 5? 70 is the point that you want to cut it off, but don't they give them up to 75?
I don't think it worked like speeding tickets. Didn't we talk about this at some meeting?
Yeah, I think the chief said that.
So there was two parts of this. Again, the first section, we're dealing with all noise, basically. And again, that's kind of why going up to 70, because that would include any noise on your property, not, we tend to focus on music, but if we're right, the way this is we're writing this is any noise. We're not, I tried to address music separately, so that 70 dB on residential is a catch-all for anything other than music, really. Any noise is other, because we address music specifically in 2 pages away.
Yeah, you're gonna have to talk me through that, David. But I think we're getting there, right?
We're getting there.
Yeah,
So-
let's keep kind of going sequentially through the page.
Right, but yeah, but I just wanted to point out that 70 dB was
Just general noise.
just general
Any
noises.
noise.
It's not exempted by an exception.
Right.
I don't know what those would be. I can't really think of any offhand. Car alarm going off would be a violation if somebody's car alarm's going off for long enough for the police to show up and find it. But that's the kind of things, this is kind of a catch-all at this point. And that's why going up from 60 to 70 made sense, because I wanted to address the yelling and music separately.
E5 is a little awkward. E5,
That was,
the sound measurement.
Yeah, I want to get to
over-
yeah, I think we're going to spend, and that's kind of what you're getting to, David, that we have a general prohibition that we're talking about here, and then there is a specific E5
Actually,
that's talking about raucous.
E or
Yeah.
or
E?
am-
Yes. I'm sorry.
Yeah,
I'm sorry,
E5.
Amy.
part of this was left over because of the way it was drafted originally. We had the districts, and I was trying to, like I
I
said,
get it.
take out the music out of what again, this was all sounds and the way it was worded. And it's kind of, again, it's really more or less left there as a catch-all for anything else. I don't know, again, I don't know what, banging garbage cans together or something.
What page are we on, Douglas?
So
Bottom of page 4.
Tim was asking about sound measurement, which
Right.
is that
Five,
B5
yes.
shall not be taken over a period of 30 seconds or greater, shall be taken. If the measurement exceeds the threshold by 5 dBA or more than 15 seconds, so I think that gives everybody a little bit of leeway
It's
in terms of
confusing.
interpretation.
I think what that means is if you show up and it's louder, you don't have to sit there and wait for 30 seconds. If it's loud, you don't have to wait for the full 30 seconds.
That's
If it's
what I read.
consistently over.
That was the
limits-
intent, is if it was at least 5 over for the first 15 seconds, it's not going to average down below that
Okay.
in the next, even if there was no noise.
Yeah.
So that was kind of, you didn't need to stand there and.
Yeah, it's not leeway, it's actually shortening the
The length of
duration
time.
of time that you need to measure if you
Yeah.
show up. You don't have to sit there for the full 30 seconds, like, okay, you're way above, you need to shut it
All
down.
right, so they're laughing for 9 seconds, whatever. It's okay, you're all right.
Yeah,
Or the wind is blowing, and then it stops, as was the case in my experiment.
The distance, and help me, I assume is this B5, sound measurement shall be taken over. This doesn't, we don't get to the distances till we get to page 6? Number
So-
3?
So under B, under 1, it's taken within the boundary line of the
Boundary line, there it
complainant's
is.
property,
Okay,
so
I
it's at
knew
the
I saw
property
something
line.
else. And then on page 6, though, just to jump forward, loudspeakers, et cetera, midway through that in red, in a manner as to be plainly audible at a distance of 50, 25 feet. Is that left?
you're choosing.
I think you're
Okay.
choosing, and that was a kind of a,
Because there's another 200, where is it?
another one that's
200
200
or
feet.
400?
Yeah, those are choices.
Okay. I didn't think I was stuttering. All right, okay, I'm jumping ahead.
But paragraph C, again, that whole paragraph was really about just general catch-all for, noise. 85 in the commercial, again, that was, I don't know why we would have I'm not even sure we really need that, but it does kind of puts a number in there for them.
You're saying at 85, that's almost limitless anyway. I mean, that's so
That's almost
loud.
limitless anyway, basically.
You wouldn't have a rock concert even any louder than that. So why have a limit?
Almost,
your
yes. That, almost my point, yeah, I guess, they could push the limit and go above that if they were really trying, but again, I just kind of left that in there.
So if I'm not mistaken, that is kind of the range, 85 plus or minus 5, that the Windjammer.
Yes, I think
has
that's how they
tried
chose that
to-
number was
Bobby,
the city,
yeah.
city was taking measurements around a typical event. That's kind of what they were getting. And it was,
And that's starting to get in range where you're actually starting to impact a person's hearing according to the health organizations.
What?
Right. Most people's hearing.
Way past that. Not from music, darn it. Okay.
so
So,
C2, 75, so this is commercial establishments, daytime is it in the draft, and this is a carryover from the original draft is set at 75. At your desk that is a graph showing measurements that were taken around the Sweetgrass Inn over a series of days to just kind of see this, and it actually basically mirrors what the sound study that was done, showing almost the identical trend, that it gets down to kind of 50 through the night. It typically is kind of in the 50, 55 range through the middle of the night. And you're not seeing the hours there, but, if you were to zoom in, you could see that it very early in the morning, it starts to ramp up. The black line there is the average of what you're seeing, and the gray area are instances. So you'll have a bang, and it'll put the top of the gray area there, and then you'll have a silent second, and it'll create an area low, and then that black line is the average, which is what we're talking about regulating. So just in the few days that were taken here, that were measured, you could see that there was a short time, I think on a Saturday night, when the readings were over 75. Pretty routinely, they're getting right at 70. That's kind of any given Thursday night, it would be around 70-ish there, pretty commonly. From my just, looking at a routine week, it seems like if 70 might be too low, 70 you might be having violations.
There's quite a bit over 80. Because you're.
Well, so those are, but
black-
we are, this is written to say that it's the average. So you would be only looking at the black line. So that gray is like that spike. It's a
high
clap.
spike for that this is probably averaging over like a minute period. So it would be the highest that was achieved. That may have been for less than a second.
Okay, so
Like a
it's not your-
scream,
okay,
a splash in the pool.
Yeah,
I understand that.
and those are real hard to measure, actually. So we do, even though we're doing a 30-second average, that average
I get it now.
Yeah,
would
so
be
you're
following
looking at
along kind of the black, what
that
you see on the
solid
black line.
And so the Sweetgrass Inn is simply a commercial establishment falling under
Yes.
number 2?
Yes, C2.
And the front beach is the
GC2,
GC2 that's
correct.
referenced in
In 3.
3.
That's C3, and then the other commercial other commercial establishments, not GC2, would be the Boathouse Inn, the city's marina. They have a little different,
Outliers.
they have a little different situation because that's a city property. There's a need for a noise control ordinance that's in here, but that would be anything commercially used other than that front strip of Ocean Boulevard.
So that's, 2 applies to the boathouse, for instance.
Correct. Boathouse, city marina.
And 3,
The Harris Teeter property, right here at your property at the corner, these properties across the street, City Hall, that would all be governed by C2. So David, could you do 75, and for Ron's benefit, he was not here for the kind of building, do you mind doing the kind of cicadas?
Oh, yeah.
And that, and make the point that you made, and it's not really germane to the commercial, but just generally that you'll have the background noise, and it'll be at a certain level. He'll then add music, and the music doesn't make a difference, even though you can hear it, until it triggers over the 55 or whatever the cicadas are. Establishments.
And that would be at their property line, so.
Would be
within
louder
their
where
property
they
line, it's gonna be quite a bit louder.
Yeah. But it did start to overtake the background noise,
Yeah,
to where you could barely hear the cicadas.
right.
Oh, I could.
So so just from an analog thinking, this is too loud because I don't have my decibel meter. I can't hear the cicadas anymore, so it must be too loud.
So thoughts on that again? I mean, that's the level that through the process that this ordinance went through prior to coming to you all, that's what they landed on. I mean, I think that you all have probably, now you have probably more kind of physical evidence than the groups prior to you had with, I don't know if that changes, if that makes you think that 75 is good, needs to be lowered, how that lands on you?
It's awful loud.
And again, this, road traffic's gonna be close to that level. I mean, so this is, 75 is not necessarily uncommon inside a residential area, or, again, because we're not distinguishing. Trucks making deliveries and stuff are gonna hit those kind of levels.
Oh, man, I get it over here in the
And again,
office,
this- yeah.
street traffic.
This was really more of the catch-all of anything. That's why seems high. Question is, does it need to be set higher, or do we even need it? But,
I, personally, I mean, I think I see the graph that shows that they pretty much are, that group is pretty frequently at 70. If, I think that they could, if the level was set at 70, they could arrange their operations to stay compliant. I mean, I think we
well,
could
we're
see.
going to address the music later again. So this was really not intended to be focused on the music as much as just the
General noise?
general
General
noise
noise.
level from the property.
I can tell you that I deal a lot with ordinances, obviously, and for me to see, and, you got to think about the officer responding. The idea of having multiple different sections to me, it gets awfully confusing.
Well, this was kind of the catch-all because of the way it was written before. That was, and the hours, it was really not, it wasn't, this particular section wasn't really put there to address music.
But if you were to have two different levels, so I think that the only reason you would do that would be is if there were different levels, correct? Because if it's.
And that's what I was getting at. When we go back in, when we start talking about the music, we set the level at 70,
Right.
everything but GC2.
But if we're gonna set it at 70, I think I would be a proponent of saying, make all of it have to be 70. Don't say that you could have 75 of crowd noise or,
Well, I think what he's trying to do is, it's the general operations that come with being in a commercial district. It's not going to be the same hustle and bustle that you would have in a residential district. So hence, you give them a little bit more leadway in a catch-all.
so a kind of, I guess the theory would be a delivery truck kind of clanging around at 74 would be okay.
Because you wouldn't have that delivery truck in a residential area.
I'm saying in a commercial area.
Right.
You have that clanging of a delivery or something.
Right.
That would be okay, but if it's music, they got it up to that.
We haven't
That-
gotten there yet.
We had got, so
Yeah.
like,
But that's,
We haven't
I think
got
we're
there.
there, I think we're
we're
kind
getting
of
there. So
crossing
like,
there now.
if you look, even though like the marina, operations at the marina, at the property line, we're giving them 75 instead of 70, a little bit more because it's a commercial, you expect more noise out of just general
Yeah.
business area. And that's kind of where that paragraph was kind of directed to.
Wow.
You're talking on page 6, raucous or amplified sound nighttime?
Right, yes.
Yes.
Should we just go there?
Yes,
Yeah, I
that
think
was,
I think we're there now.
Okay.
well,
Well,
I wanted the loudspeakers.
Yeah, number
Hit
3.
that right there.
We
Yeah.
got a choice of 50 or 25 feet.
That was, our current ordinance is basically prohibited. Back when the ordinance was written, there was probably no such thing as portable radios. But,
They had transistors.
Walkie-talkies.
yeah, but you couldn't get them that loud. So that was, again, kind of my question is, was the intent to ban music on the beach or not? Because that's a public space, or on the streets. Just to bring it up for discussion is, I went ahead and put this as common, if it's plainly audible at 50 feet, that's, twice the distance of the roadway. Is that a reasonable, if you're gonna play music in a public space? keep it below that people 50 feet away from you can't hear it.
So just to ground everybody on number 3, that
Yeah.
is specifically to public spaces. So
Right.
this is not a commercial establishment, a residential establishment. This is like the beach, the roadway, the
Somebody playing the car
Sidewalk.
stereo real loud.
car stereo going down the road,
That's what I
sitting
was
at a,
thinking.
so that's,
Screen
that,
pad.
that's
or their-
what
their golf
3 is
cart with the
specifically.
boom box on the back of it. That's what, and again, 50, 25 seemed reasonable. 50 was kind of on the higher of where I've seen some of them go up to 100 feet away. 50 just seemed like if you're 50 away from somebody on the beach and can hear their radio, is it too loud?
Is the goal of the decibel level to enforcement? I mean, so Chief Cornett has a number that he can go out and,
That was
So-
part of why the decibel level, they were wanting that.
because City of Charleston doesn't have decibel level at all. They just say if it's too loud from the street, it's too loud.
So going back through looking like at, actually, what do you call it, not Supreme Court, but state Supreme Court rulings on noise violations that have gotten to that level, they get into a lot of discussion of this, and this is where a lot of it come back. Our old ordinance was written very vaguely, it's like a reasonable person, it's irritating, and those don't hold up if it gets into a court. They just throw them out. So seems to be 2 trains of thought as you use a plainly audible term with a distance. Those tend to hold up very well, or a decibel reading, because you really can't argue if it's a decibel reading at a specific
So you can't have a
distance.
police officer be a reasonable person to determine that it's,
Well, the
Too loud.
interpretation is the noise itself reasonable? So like when we talk about Sweetgrass Inn, is it reasonable for a pool a hotel to make a lot of noise? Well, yeah, you would expect it. So that's where it gets thrown out in court. It's not whether the person's reasonable, it's whether the circumstances of the noise is reasonable. And that's very subjective. And that's been the problem.
Yeah, the problem, and that's been Chief Cornet's point all along, is it's just too subjective.
gotcha, so he needs a hard number.
He needs a hard number
To hang,
is what, yeah, to hang his hat on in court. Otherwise, they're kind of just, going through the motions without it.
And I'll get into that one in the later, but I'll go, the distance of plainly audible, that was actually very, like I said, it's fairly common in noise ordinances, and it's held up in most court rulings. Again, if you're using the beach example, the police officers could walk up and go, okay, I hear that guy's radio, he knows where he is, he knows how, he can measure the distance and say, I heard this noise at 100 feet away, and wrote the ticket. And that would stand up fairly easily in a court. Not that, again, I'm not sure how many people would, try to fight something like that, but it's a good definition. And that's kind of where that came up into this one was, if we want them to be able to ticket people playing music on the streets really loud, we need to put something in there specifically to say, under what conditions is it considered too loud?
So David, just so I'm clear, the way it was originally drafted, you couldn't have it at all.
At all.
I mean, the way, you've actually inserted language that said to be audible
Audible.
at some distance away.
At some distance is okay.
So this is a broadening, a loosening of what was in there, but I think
But,
it would be unreasonable to think that you couldn't have a Bluetooth speaker on the beach if you're sitting there with your family.
Right.
So it's a slight kind of broadening. but
Or
I
in the
think it's a
rec center,
reasonable-
for example, too. And like I said, 50 feet to me seemed like a reasonable distance. That's really, should it be less or more? But that's kind of, I'm asking.
well, no, I mean, this is for the streets and sidewalks and parks and outdoor places owned or under the control of the city. So that's what we're on, right?
Correct. Yeah. So it would, I think in my mind, the beach is the most common
Right.
public space that people are kind of playing music, that or a car at a stop sign. Or a motorcycle, sometimes you see that motorcycle with
So,
I think,
Is 50 good?
yeah, between 50 and 25, is there?
Is there
Is
a
it-
preference?
50 would be.
I love
depth of the
25,
room.
but that's not realistic.
I mean, walking the beach in the afternoon,
I think
50 is probably a good number.
Yeah, you walk away.
And that's
Yeah,
over
you're
the
walking-
the
you're
sounds of
walking,
the
you walk
ocean and
past
the
it.
wind and everything else.
Right.
So 50 feet is pretty high, was pretty lenient.
All right, I'm hearing 3 50s and 2,
I'm fine with
25.
50.
all right,
25
fine.
would be my personal preference, but
I'm fine
that's
with 50.
irrelevant.
I'm-
50.
Well, I don't understand why people bring music to the beach.
Well, yeah. My personal preference would be 20, but I think 50 is reasonable.
All right, we're going to go with 50 there?
50 there,
Yeah.
sounds,
You can still hear.
All right, so now we're to number 5, which in my reading of it again, it kind of gave me a little bit of, it gave me pause, this idea of having 2 different standards within the same ordinance, but kind of 2 pages apart. I would fear that the average person reading this ordinance would have some confusion. And I guess I would at least, if we were gonna do it this way, I think I would at least put them right next to each other.
well,
And have
okay,
it
Yes.
such that you're kind of saying, and you're plainly saying what it is, kind of
I mean,
everyday noise is this,
to be honest,
raucous amplified sound is this.
the 50 to 5 nighttime noise, all the other ones could probably be taken out. I mean, again, it was kind of there because, as a catch-all for other than loud music and people yelling. I'm not sure what other, noises we experience in this community that would fall under that, if we address, again, if we address music here. It was just, that tended to be the way most cities that do ordinances, do this type of ordinance with the dB level. They set a daytime, nighttime maximum, and then they address specific issues separately. But to your point, Doug, I think you could almost take out the daytime, the earlier daytime limits and not really have an effect. Because I can't think of any noises during the day that we're trying to target. Because we're allowing construction work.
So David, can we, just for, you're saying you think we can delete all of 6?
No, not 6. I think we could delete 2 and
5.
3.
Oh. Leave,
Leave 5 and 6 and delete 2 and 3. Or,
1,
I lost my page. Or 1, 2, and 3.
Or you mean on page 5?
1, 2, and 3 on what page?
6.
On page 4,
Oh, yeah.
where we were talking about the maximum dB levels,
Page 4, you're saying B?
I'm kind of losing. You were saying you didn't like that you repeated it. Again, there was 2 intents. Paragraph, or number,
Yeah.
on page, starting on page 4, number 1, 2, and 3 that says
So
daytime
C,
limits
1, 2, and 3.
was for all noise, the way it was written. That's any noise, not just music.
This down here, right?
Yeah.
That part. Where he's talking about 1 that starts on page 4, and then 2 and 3 that are continued on page 5.
So,
That's the meat of the ordinance. I don't want to.
yeah, that,
Well, I mean, again, that was addressing all noise, any, regardless, our discussions, we keep focusing on music, but those particular paragraphs are talking about any noise.
so David, if we were to do that, wouldn't 6, 2 allow a residence to have 70 or 75 dB all day?
They could play music that loud, yes.
I mean, from my
I like the
perspective.
detail on page 4, number 1, and continuing on to page 5, 2, 3, and 4. I think that spells it out for the officers. I had a little problem with 5 and 6 from page 6 on to page 7. I think it needs to be all noise.
Huh?
I think it needs to be all noise, and I think of cars going down the street and, which we've addressed, number 3, basically.
So let me jump to number 5 then, and I'll try to explain that one. So
Okay.
we said
We're
all
on
noise.
page 6.
Right.
Number
On
5.
Page 6, number 5.
Number 6, so we're saying all noise at night between 10 and 6 or 7, it's set at 55. When you hit number 5, there's 2 criteria there is, and this comes from our old ordinance, if it's plainly audible inside a residence. That's, again, directly from our current ordinance. And it goes from 10, and it's addressing music, just music, but from 10 PM to 10 AM. So it's the morning hours, you cannot, regardless of the other one, it's cutting music an additional 3 hours of the day. The all noise, because it wasn't practical at 7 AM, you're gonna have noise above 55 dB, starting at 7 AM, when they start emptying trash cans and stuff. That makes that part of that ordinance kind of, again, it was the fact that you're addressing all noise. And so in the residence one, if you can hear it in your residence, so that, and it says, and it exceeds 50 dB measured, not 55 anymore. That, there's the double criteria there. One is, first of all, somebody's gonna have to complain that they can hear it in their house. We had this issue kind of with the police, is they can't come into, well, you can invite them into your house to try to listen. We don't go into, is that with the windows open or the windows closed? The 50 dB is kind of sets a standard that for the police to go out and measure it outside your house at 50 dB, what we heard in here is that could be plainly audible inside a residence. 45 dB could be plainly audible inside a residence, but you can't ticket somebody for 45 because they've taken reasonable precautions not to play music to a point that it can be heard. And that's kind of why that it's written that way of the double criteria, is because, again, we're talking about measuring sound at kind of an arbitrary distance. If you're on your porch and what you can control, you can't tell what the person next door to you hears, but you can tell if your music is too loud that you can hear it at your property line.
And it, for every time you double your distance, it drops 6
Right.
decibels.
So that was what basically is, we're trying to keep that plainly audible that we've always had, that if you can hear music inside your house from your neighbor, chances are it's too loud. If you can hear it because your windows are open and he has it turned way down to 50 dB,
Right,
you
too bad.
you need to close your window.
Yep.
So that was kind of what I was trying to achieve in the wording of that, or I guess what other people have tried to achieve in the wording of it. So does that make sense now, Doug?
I mean, I get it, but from a just practical standpoint of having 2 different sections, 2 different sets of times, 2 different sets of decibels.
So to
again,
me,
kinda
this is
three-
the more important one. This is the one that we really have more of an issue with. The other one, again, was.
So could we merge these together to just say maximum decibel levels? And I think it should be a catch-all, including raucous noise. I mean, you're only getting, from my perspective, the background noise type things, I don't think they're ever getting a call on a thing that's just making a pool. I
A
think to
broken
your
air
point,
conditioner. Well, generally you won't. I don't expect them to get calls. This is, again, this is an ordinance that our citizens will read, and hopefully, because it's all come up in the discussions, more people be aware of. Oh, I can complain, I can go talk, most of them will go say something to their neighbor, and then their neighbor's just gonna fix the problem. They're not gonna get reported to the police, but it at least gives people a understanding of what is reasonable.
and that's
what we
page
can see.
4.
That's, yes. No,
Page
that's.
4 would be HVACs.
Isn't that under
Yes.
general
It's
noise?
just general noise. All
Yeah.
of this, again,
Not raucous or amplified noise.
Right.
That would not be your HVAC.
yeah,
That
that's
would
the
be-
guy
hey,
running his air compressor in his garage because he got to turn the power off. And again, most of these would be handled by somebody just going to their neighbor and saying, hey, could you turn this off? So no, they don't get reported to the police, but it sets a standard in our ordinance of what is acceptable in our community. I don't know, that was kind of my thoughts on it anyway.
Yeah, I would,
Well-
well, and I hear it, I hear you. I would, rather see it all 1, 2, 3, 4, and not, and then 5 and 6. Can we incorporate in number 1, let's see, that's the residential one, some sort of language that, we say 70 dB during daytime hours, such and so, Sunday, Thursday, such and so, Friday, Saturday, for residential and rental properties. The 70 dB, that is, we're allowed to measure that from the boundary line, if I'm not mistaken.
Right.
And then can we say, and not to exceed 50 as measured from in the interior of adjacent property, residential property? Because it's not,
But that,
is that what we're trying to
there's
say?
not
here?
a residential, the residential differentiation happened in page 4.
Well, that's what I'm looking at, number 1 on
He's
page
trying-
4.
he's trying to
and saying
incorporate
that, and
Yeah.
as measured from the neighbor's house.
So David, you're
Inside.
losing that in page 6 and 7, the lower thresholds for residential property, correct?
Well, number 1, as I read it, is the exterior measurement. Then officer walks up to the yard, goes to the
Number
boundary
1.
between the properties, page
Number-
4,
Oh, yeah?
where it's 70 dB during the daytime.
At the property line.
And then, however, you're gonna say, I don't know how to word, I'm not a lawyer, but you're right, you say something basically that goes, and not to exceed 50 dB when measured from the adjacent interior
No,
residence.
you're still making the 50 dB measurement at the property line.
Oh,
You're
I
just
didn't-
making it at the structure.
No, at the property line, it's same measurement locations, it's referring to the same paragraph of how you make the measurement. The
But it
50
says-
again goes back to what we were hearing before, is that you can hear 50 dB
Right.
with the background noise higher than that.
No, but the way it's written, number 5 specifically on page 6 is A, is plainly audible in any adjacent I assume that means inside, any adjacent dwelling or other residence, and exceeds 50 dB when measured pursuant to paragraph B above, and B above.
Is the whole measurement at the property line.
But it says and, the word and is there, not or.
Right, and.
Right, they both have to happen.
So both have to happen. So, and the only way you're gonna have the first one is somebody complain, because no officer can go into your house to see if this music is too loud inside your house. So you actually have to have a complaint
Yeah, you'd be invited in.
and be invited in.
I'm
He doesn't
complaining,
have,
come on in, listen to it.
well, he doesn't
measure it.
have to be invited in, then he has the complaint that says, I can hear music in my house. that's enough to go to court to say that the 50 dB was again to kind of protect the person making noise from a neighbor that has his windows open or is in his ear to the window going, I can still hear it,
Yeah.
even though that's,
Yeah, but officer, from outside, it's still 70 on legal, according to page 4, number 1.
no, both activities are illegal.
I'm only 69.
You don't have to violate both paragraphs to get a ticket. You only, it's like,
Yeah, I think
are
this is where
you see or reckless
I think
driving?
that's
Oh, I
where
see,
the
because one of them
confusion is.
specifies evening hours, 4 doesn't, or 4.
Well, it dictates where you are in your property. If you're inside the house, the threshold is 50 dB. If you're sitting on your porch, the threshold is 70. It's kind of how I interpret that.
Okay, so
David, why don't we assume,
this is the nighttime.
of
Excuse me.
numbers, I'm
Yeah.
on page 4C. If they get a call, if the police get a call, let's just assume it is a raucous noise. Why wouldn't our framework plug in whatever numbers are appropriate into page 4C1 and make the hours what they are, what they've historically been, 10 to 10? I think I think
It goes back to, if you go out right now at 7 o'clock in the morning, you're going to measure levels over 50 dB in the neighborhoods just from the noise traffic and everything else. So they're not going to be able to enforce anything unless we set that level up to 60, and then you got back to the problem of, I can still hear music inside my living room from next door. So the hours were one issue, and again, it was, I didn't pick this format. I think our old format was actually better, but when we went to this all noise level, set a limit, it's,
Well, that's what, I guess, 50 then. I mean, I think to your point, in the middle of the night, we're getting over 50, kind of at all times. So that's why it was chosen to be
it could
55.
be, yeah. You probably
So basically,
won't
you
get a
can't,
complaint.
during the course of the night, you can't do anything that would be above just the normal ambient noise, which appears to be right at 55.
Right, this goes into, well, again, mowing my yard at 2 in the morning. That's going to be over 55.
That's gonna be over 55.
That's not,
So
that's not,
C4 is gonna get you there.
right,
Yes.
right. That
if
would
you
be,
hear it in the house.
if I was mowing my yard at night, I'd be a
Violation
violation
of
of
C4.
C4. If I was playing music, I'd be in violation of a different paragraph.
I guess I don't see the benefit of, let's just say, if you're over 55, whether you're mowing the lawn or you're
I'm
playing
going-
music or you're
I
banging
kind of go
pots.
back to our old ordinance was, if it's plainly audible in your house.
So why don't we add the plainly audible, the and the plainly audible after C4?
It's a formatting. That's what I'm getting, it's just a formatting thing.
Oh, yeah, I mean, as far as putting this in a different order. But again, those two different paragraphs are addressing two different issues.
Well, your
But it's
timing-
different times, it's different
timing's-
decibels, it's I mean,
Yeah.
you have taken the number of variables for an officer to understand, and you've there's the use, the time, the day, the decibels, and each of those, and then you've doubled it. So you've taken something that's pretty complex to start with, and you've literally,
Well, again,
Double.
that goes back, if I was trying to write from scratch, I would have deleted the all noise issues, because we don't have, apparently, we don't have an issue with that. But when the safety committee started this, for whatever reasoning, I guess, that they wanted to use this format, they were basically trying to set a nighttime noise limit. I understand that we want quiet hours from 10 PM to 7 AM or whatever hours. That's not addressing specifically music, that's again, goes back to, other noises that you make on your property. The,
Compressor,
huh?
the compressor.
Yeah, the compressor running in the night that I forgot to turn off, or, you know, it's a catch-all, I guess, is what I'm kind of getting at.
I think it just needs to be 4 straight zones, if you will. Residential, commercial, the GC1, and your nighttime. Daytime standards, and then a nighttime, which number 4 is across the board, and you're talking 5 dB difference, inside or outside. And so I think we can do that in number 4 with an inside or outside measurement.
It becomes, the challenge is it becomes, when you start looking at all noise, and you set a decibel level, again, that's not distinguishing music or my car. Now you've, and again, there are cities that have done this, now you gotta get into a whole list of exceptions. Does that include the bells on the church? Does that include you slamming the lid on your garbage can? Or when you say all noise, it's all noise, and then you've got to create a whole list of, well, what is reasonably accepted that will go about that level? Or the other option is you set that level so high that you're basically allowing the music rowdy behavior that we have issues with to be much louder than what's our current ordinances probably allows.
But isn't that's what C1 is doing now? It's setting, I mean, that was the way it was written, that it's setting limits for all noise.
Right,
And I think,
all noise, unless there's
All
an
noise.
exception.
so back to your example, of clanging your trash can lid and all that, I mean, that's,
That's a
think you're saying-
violation. That's, again, I'll use that other one is, you know, the bells at the church. They're probably above that level. Is that our intent to when we say all noise?
but you're not addressing that.
No, we're not,
In this-
because we've set the level high enough that shouldn't be an issue.
Well,
But music at that level is an issue. And that's, to me, was the challenge in the way this was written was, you know, I've got to set if I'm saying all noise, and I think of what's reasonable traffic, day-to-day noise in the community, it's pretty high in our community. So we want to set a high level. But if we want to also at the same time curtail noises that can be easily controlled like music, then we want a lower level.
So some of the white music that he was playing, you can tune that out. But we could put a maximum on it. But you could still hear the music that was at a lower decibel than the allotted amount because it wasn't as high. Does that make, am I just confusing the issue?
I don't know, well, it makes sense to me, but
You can still hear the music at a lower decibel. But if I start hearing that same music inside the house, now it's a problem.
I get it. I get what you're doing. I'm just
Yeah.
saying it's,
it's a challenge, yes.
you're taking an already complex situation that already struggles with enforcement and you're adding new layers of complexity to it, which I believe. So if
Very
you- if
rarely
you
are they
like-
going to be enforcing those earlier limits because
So if you
they're going to
like,
get dealt with.
if you like page 6, section 5, if we like that format and we like that wording, let's make the levels what we've just kind of gone through and the times what we've just gone through. And let's add, because right now, the way that's written, you could have a rental playing, you could, or your neighbor could play music at a level of 69 dBs all day, right? Which we think
Correct.
is awfully loud for a residential zone.
Yeah,
So why don't we reformat 5 and 6 to add back in the residential limit that's covered in C. I'm on, we got, yeah, where is it?
C1 is
For-
residential.
Yes, C1, so let's incorporate. And then add 5 decibels for a commercial establishment, and then
So-
have a nighttime establishment, a nighttime number, all with one set of
Which would be
hours.
C4.
Yes.
See.
So just incorporate the same limits that are in page 4C 1, 2, 3, and 4 into 5, 6, and I guess it would create a new 7.
Because that's going to be basically weakening higher than what our current standards are right now.
Why wouldn't we just put them at these lower, so 70?
Well, that kind of gets back, I guess my point is if we just took out C,
Altogether.
C1 through 4 and kept this,
And just had, so it wouldn't be distinguishing between a commercial property and a residential property.
right, on page
Yeah.
6, number 5, the nighttime, that's everything but the GC2 district.
So a commercial operation would be treated identically to a
A
home.
residential, yes.
So that,
And that goes back to, if you, going through our ordinances, those, everything other than the GC2 district basically says that those zones are intended to be commercial businesses compatible with a residential zone.
so
So why
set,
would we have a different level for
So-
anything else?
so set the sound level for a residence at 75.
Yeah, see, I like 1, 2, 3, 4. And I think we need to work on 1 and 4 to incorporate what 5 and 6 have in them.
Or, I mean, or if you do it the way David's saying, it basically would allow a residence to be as loud as a hotel, which, I mean, I think that that there was a desire to have a home be quieter than a hotel. I mean, that's kind of, and following the issue through, that seemed to be kind of uniformly agreed to. But
The
if we
thing,
think
I
we're just gonna
guess,
go
that
75 across the board,
Yeah, the thing,
Or
the
70.
thing that catches it is, of course, the part of number 5, in my mind, is it's plainly audible in the adjacent dwelling or other residence. And it exceeds 50 dB when measured pursuant to paragraph B above, et cetera, et cetera. That would kind of perhaps tamp down that 75, to your point, Douglas, to be, so it's not intruding on me and my residents next door.
but that's only in the nighttime.
Yes,
So daytime
I don't care.
could be 75.
Yes. I think that's when it's most intrusive to everyone, is at the nighttime.
Yeah.
And you have a lot of daytime ambient noise that's up there.
Is
Again,
it up to 70, 75?
70, 75, you know, I want to
But-
keep
so-
residential at 70.
Okay, so
Daytime.
you're okay with the nighttime if it's, you can hear it in your house and it's
And
over
it's-
50 at the property line?
Yeah, I don't want to hear you
That's-
banging out Black Sabbath in my bed,
Right, okay.
from your house.
Why not?
Because I want to
And
play it.
again, the 50 dB limit on that is actually more strict than what we're allowing for all noise.
Right.
So that's why I said.
That's why
if-
you need to keep it
That's-
music.
Right, that's kind of the reasoning,
You
again,
keep-
because,
So you've lowered it to 50, but you've made it so that it's audible
but it has to be
inside.
audible inside a house also.
So the fact that our noise meters show that ambient noise is always over 50.
Well, it's not always over 50, but,
Outside ambient, was that it?
Yeah, it is. I mean, look at,
well, where you took it, but in the, we're not dealing with one particular property.
I know, but there's nothing going on. I mean, it's the same, there's no noise emanating at night. It's shut down and just like a parking lot at Sandy's is quiet in the middle of the night.
However,
Right. I can't explain it. I can tell you, again, it's going to depend on time. I don't know why it's as loud as it is. I can go in my backyard and I'll see readings below 40.
Below 40.
Um,
So maybe that's just maybe that's HVAC
It could be
hums,
HVAC noise,
pool
again,
pumps.
right. The
And
pool
you
pump,
happen to have-
if they have, pool out there. And again, that's where that 55 limit came in, was you're going to have
So-
stuff that makes noise depending on the location.
so if I go inside and shut all the windows and doors, I don't want to hear their pump, and I don't want to hear their HVAC, and I don't want to hear their music. How's that?
Well,
You might hear it, but it'll be at a level that's
that you
within the
barely
code.
hear.
And if you got a more current home with
Right.
impact-resistant glass
You
and
don't
open
hear
cell
anything.
foam walls, you're not gonna hear it.
Right.
Well, you do with older homes.
All right, so my only desire is that we only have it once.
I don't think you can do it just once unless you just take out that 55 limit and we
That's what I'm-
only address noise. But I go back to,
I think that's what we're potentially saying, is we're gonna say if it's your pool pumps, your HVAC, just generic stuff that we don't get calls on.
I
anyway.
don't agree with that, again, it goes back to, I don't want to be running my weed eater at midnight just because
Well, that
that
would be a-
55 would catch that. Even though we say,
It would, that
It's
would
not
be a
music, but-
raucous, that would be a raucous
not in the definition,
sound.
I'm mowing my yard, I'm doing, that's not.
Routine stuff.
Yeah. Again, I don't expect that to ever be an issue, but that's kind of where that all noise at 55 is, kind of going back to our old ordinance. Is it reasonable to have quiet hours between 10 PM and 7 AM? With a few exceptions, which we kind of get into later, but I don't know,
We're at an impasse.
I don't think we are. I think it's just
it's
a way to.
Formatting.
Yeah, it's a
how to put them
format.
together so they make sense. But again, Doug, that 55 was an all noise. I could see taking it out, but again, it was the catch-all for even looking at our old noise ordinance. Is that a reasonable to have quiet hours at night? And the answer is yes. Well, what is quiet? Anything below 55, we have to throw a number out.
And here are your exceptions. Here's ruckus and amplified noise.
Here's your exceptions, and actually, yeah, music, 55 is not quite enough. It needs to be down to 50. That's kind of what it's saying.
Douglas doesn't look happy.
So now you're going back to leaving page 4, subsection C.
Yes, I am. I mean, you were saying take it out, or not, you were saying take out the one I think that's most
I'm saying
important.
take out either one, whichever one.
I don't think you can take out either one of them, though.
I do not think that you can I can tell you, this is a room of 10 smart people at least. To try to give for me to give this to the chief and say, instruct your guys on how to do this, how to enforce it, how to convince a courtroom, it's just too complex. It can't, I mean, unless we're gonna have, it's just too complicated.
I'm
It has
thinking-
to be, it has to be a simple, it has to be simple. And when you have multiple different times, different decibel levels for different activities, people are gonna point back, well, that section says I can have up to 55. I just don't think, I don't think we're helping the situation with adding this level of complexity. I don't know if you can, I mean, I don't, and
Well, again, we could go back to taking our old ordinance and taking the current wording in there of plainly audible inside your house and simply replacing that paragraph with paragraph number 5 and be done. I mean, our old one did actually address what's reasonable noise levels and had some kind of catch-all for any noise. When we decide to change to this format and say, our catch-all is a limit of 55 nighttime, and again, goes back to, if we go to 10 PM to 10 AM, everybody's gonna be in violation between 7 and 10 AM of that 55 limit, or most properties. So we're not gonna be enforcing it. So we're putting an ordinance out that we know most people are violating. I can't see doing that.
Is there a chart that could be made that would
I
make it
was
easier?
just thinking.
There are
Could you just
actually.
in an
so-
Excel sheet?
Yes, that's all, I mean, that's me, I'm thinking Excel sheet goes to the police officers, you know, and they just look and go. done.
I would say
mean,
the
that's-
Excel sheet should go to the
Counsel.
lawyer
Well,
and let him
yes.
put the words around what
Yes.
David
And
is
council's
trying.
gonna need it too, just listening to that, council's
Yeah.
gonna need that, they're not.
I mean, the format, I understand what David is saying, is not
Yeah,
great, and when you merge them and
It
then
becomes-
modify it, it gets very confusing. But I think, to your point, yes, an Excel or a,
Yeah, there's a lot of the
Some sort of
ordinances I
chart.
looked at do a chart and say,
yep,
you
and you
know,
just hand it to council, and you hand it to the attorney, and you say, put the words in between. Does that make? He still was like, do not use multiple levels.
No,
Yeah.
yeah, again, you've got, somebody calls you at 9:30. And it's somebody mowing his grass at 9:30 AM with a boombox on his, and he goes out there and he gets a reading that's in the middle here. What is the officer gonna do? You all are super smart. What is that officer gonna do?
So he's trying to choose between the decibel of the lawnmower versus the decibel of the boombox.
And you got two different times, in here. And let's just add a complexity, he's in the commercial area. So where are you gonna find that on your matrix?
I don't know if they can listen to music if they're professional.
Policemen will have to have those little things like quarterbacks have, so.
I mean, we, literally, that example, I
you
can't tell
can't.
you how I would direct the officer.
Although rare, it's a good point.
Oh, it's all shades of that. That's all day, every day, that's what it would be. Well, it's a pool with and that's what we were trying to kind of,
well, again,
Pin down.
if it's music or people yelling, it's that paragraph, which is more stricter than the other one. So if they're in violation of 5 and 6,
If the music is in violation, then he gets.
you don't care what once they say it's music, you apply the 5 or 6 criteria. If it's something other than
I'm gonna
music,
I'm
then
gonna
you would
try to
apply the
follow
other
through.
criteria.
I think we should just make a chart and,
and you're gonna have every day, you're gonna have 7 is different than, so you're gonna have one section that's the hours 7, 8, 9, and then you're gonna have a next section that's
GC1, GC2.
GC2,
So
that's gonna be.
The only reason
Residential.
for me changing the hours, again, because it went back to that all noise. And again, starting at 7 AM, you're not going to achieve that nighttime level in any neighborhood.
So if you're in a residential area near the hotel, all the deliveries, or let me find another one. If you live over.
I'll use, when they go to pick up trash cans.
There you go.
It's going to be above, the level that, the noise that they make picking up trash is going to be above 55 dB. We can add an exemption for that. And again, you're going to get through a laundry list of exemptions. So instead of going through the laundry list of exemptions of when do you allow that kind of noise to occur, I moved the hours to 7. We can use, if it's just a difference of hours, we can move the music hours to 7 AM also.
That sounds good to me.
The only reason I used 10 is because that's what was in the draft that I got. And that's what's in our current ordinances.
So run that, say that last,
If it makes it less confusing to use the same hours for daytime, we can allow music to start at 7 AM instead of 10 AM. That's really the only difference.
yeah. That does help part of it.
Okay.
That's part of the,
But yeah, then it becomes really an issue of, is it music or is it some other noise source of which paragraph applies?
Well, just to complicate things, on page 8, number 6, you have 7:30 to 10 PM.
I think we can get some consistency here.
Where was that?
Page
It shall be
8.
unlawful for an owner or member of an owner's immediate family, page
Page
8,
number
number
6.
6, to perform maintenance, repairs, or other work on their own property between the hours of 7:30 AM and 10 PM Monday through Thursday, and between the hours of 9 AM and 10 PM on
It should be
Saturday and
lawful. They
Sunday.
can do it.
It is, it says that. It says
No,
lawful,
I-
done.
7:30 those.
This has-
consistent
Yeah.
with-
You're right.
This tied in with the contractor working hours that basically, again, it can be 7 AM Saturday and Sunday.
I guess if we come down with some consistent hours, that would make Douglas a little less
well,
happy.
the contractors have always started at 8. I think that generally, or 7.
7.
7, I'm sorry. And generally, I think that people have kind of learned to accept that 10 to 10 is the daytime hours. Right? That's what's,
Well, like I said, the issue becomes with that is starting at 7 AM, noise levels in the community
Yeah.
start rising. So
You might as well make it
7,
7
8
to
to
10.
you might as well make it 7. Or else you're not going to be able to enforce it, and then we're kind of back in the same boat of where we started. So ignoring the hours for right now, so the music inside music, does that make sense to everybody? Being plainly audible inside your house?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Then I wanted to jump to the next one, which was during with the daytime. I'll just go with daytime hours. It's gonna be, during daytime, it can be audible inside your house is what that is really saying. The 200 feet, those two numbers are related. 200 feet, it would have to be around 70 dB at the property line for it to be heard at 200 feet away. If people feel that's too strict, we could go up to 75 dB music, and it will probably be heard at 400 feet away, which, for reference, that's about the distance of a block. 200 is about half a block. And that,
I say 200.
I'd be 200 too, because,
A block is, that's a long way.
to create.
it was kind of a misprint on mine, but I'll bring it up. On that one, I had the word "and." I had intended it to be "or," either one. The issue comes again because we're trying to measure sound at random distances, and it's all dependent on what you can hear is based on background. Can music be below 70 dB and still be heard further than 200 feet? If it's real quiet, yes, you can hear the foghorn on Sullivan's Island. Does that mean somebody, if you use the word "or," somebody would have to turn down their sound below that 70 dB so that it's not audible below, at 200 feet? If you use "and," both criteria would exist. If it's, the ambient noise outside is really loud, you'll never hear it at 100 feet, no matter how loud they make it. Again, I wouldn't see that being an issue, because if you can't hear it, why is it shouldn't be bothering you, except that if you're the house next door.
Would it make sense to mirror the cities?
City of Charleston?
No. Talking about loudspeakers that are in areas that are under the control of
Oh.
the city.
That was only, again, that was mainly for the marina property, and that was public, because it's public, and we say that you can't have any music. That was their approval not to fall under that criteria. That really had nothing to do with what levels they can play it at.
Okay.
So this one kind of came back into daytime. And again, I did not, I applied it to everything other than the GC2. If we wanted to go allow higher for commercial properties, we could do that. But again, it was that was a question is, if you use "or," then either one of the criterias would have to be met. Makes it, in some instances, it makes it more strict, in other instances, it makes it more lenient. Using "and," well, which way I just said that one, sorry.
Or,
Well, it made sense how you explained it with that
Yeah.
background noise. So
In fact, so it makes it hard. I assume like I think a 50 dB background noise in those levels at 70 at a property line, 200 feet away might be just barely audible.
I guess it all comes back to music is what we get complaints about.
Right.
So even though it's 7 o'clock in the morning with the trash trucks and the recycle trucks going backwards and beeping and clamoring.
And those tend to go away fairly quickly,
Right.
where,
Right.
but I think the 200, again, that was kind of my question is 200 feet reasonable? Should it be 400 feet?
So David, 200 correlates to 70, 400 correlates to 75.
Roughly
So you
assuming a
would choose-
50 dB
If you went with
background.
70, you'd choose 200. If you went with 75, you'd choose 400.
Right,
Those two would need to kind of align.
yes.
So, I mean, I guess from my perspective, the way this is written, it doesn't differentiate between commercial and residential.
Other than the
Residential-
GC2.
Yeah, just GC2. The residential standard is 70 that we've chosen in an earlier section. The commercial section is 75 in the section that we've,
75 for, it'd be, again, 75 for noises other than music and,
We're back to ruckus again.
right. So you're either having the effect, depending on which one you choose here. If you choose 75, you're allowing louder music than what the other section is in residential areas. If you choose the lower, you're requiring commercial properties to lower their levels to 70.
well, this one, yes, you're requiring, when it comes to music, you're requiring commercial properties to adhere to the same as residential.
Or you set it at
If you go-
75 and
If
you're
you go with
allowing-
70. If you go to 75, residential still can't go over 70, any noise, period. So there's, even if it's music, this doesn't give them an out of it. It makes it kind of, we don't need it. And we could address it only saying commercial properties. That wasn't the intent of that choice, is to change the residential levels. I don't know, did that make sense to you? If we changed it to 400 feet and 75, then this paragraph really only applies to, we don't actually need this paragraph to put it, other than the audible portion of it.
I think that was my original point. Put the audible section put the audible language in the other section and just delete this.
Yeah, but I'm not sure why we have all the sections. Again, I keep it simple, 1, 2, 3, 4, and then incorporate the,
And
some wording that, you know,
I can see
clearly
your point,
defines
and
music.
the, raising the all noise levels up to where I did, because we're allowing for that, and then the lowering of some of the music levels, they've actually come together to some extent. So, right now, this paragraph, again, if we go with 270, it really only applies to the commercial property, but
And it has the effect of lowering.
the distance, plainly audible criteria just really comes into the music, and again, that's because there could be somebody mowing their yard at 70 dB or whatever, making noise at 70, and you can still hear music below that, that's lower. And it would be audible, a block away. But yes, this paragraph in effect is limiting commercial properties when it comes to music to residential standards.
Or the other way, depending on what they choose.
Well, if you went the other way, it wouldn't apply to residential, because residential can't go up to they can't go above 70, go up to 75, because they'd be a violation of the first paragraph.
Well, if somebody gets if they get a ticket, they're gonna say, this section specifically says that my music, and this is how you've explained it. Page 4C is talking about generic noise, but this is specifically to amplified noise. They're gonna say section 6, subsection 2 allows me to go to 75. I don't think you could then, if you have that section in there that says everybody outside of GC2 can go to 75, and they write a ticket for 74, that lawyer is gonna point right at that section that says I'm allowed to go to 75.
It doesn't say it's not an exception. It's a different, again, we're not making an exception at this point. We're making more restrictive requirements unless we change the level. So it's not allowing you to go up to 75. It's basically saying any noise can be at 70 is a violation. By the way, music, I don't need the paragraph if we change it. The only thing it's really bringing to the table is the plainly audible side of it.
I don't think it reads that way. And you've said, in the daytime, outside of GC2, raucous or amplified sound between the hours of such and such is a problem when it exceeds 75 dBs when measured pursuant to the paragraph above. So I think you've set a limit that's either, and you got two different choices there, one is residential and one is commercial. I mean, depending on which limit the planning commission, it has one implication or the other on section 4, in my reading of it.
Yeah, if you're going to the 75 level,
You would need to,
you're right.
if it's music,
It,
specifically, and your music is up to 75, if that's the chosen number, you're okay with it.
oh, part of that goes back to my original, that should have been an or there.
I find it very confusing. I want to do 1, 2, 3, 4 and incorporate some very simple,
I think we could do it, just get beyond the
Numbers.
formatting.
I mean, it is more than formatting. It is two different standards, not just a,
Those two different standards for different types of noise.
right.
Yes.
I also, I mean, if it's
I
one
mean,
and two,
This, to go back to your point, Doug, I could see eliminating C number 1, everything but the nighttime, 1, 2, and 3. Because again, I don't know of any noise, anything other than music that we really have an issue with during the daytime, and construction noise, which we're addressing both of them already.
so basically substituting 5 for C.
Yes.
so everything across the board, 75.
Yes.
I think, what did you, in other words, we would not care about all noise. All we care
Right.
about is music being above.
And rock, I mean, if it's a raucous.
Well, those two, yeah, I'm combining
That's a,
those.
yeah, but I mean, it's specifically amplified sound or a raucous sound. I mean, if you're creating a raucous sound, that's a problem.
That's
If
problem.
it's a,
Any other noise
something else, it's a routine sound that's not raucous, it's not covered.
So number 5, you're not setting a limit other than in the interior measured, and we're talking about a neighbor. Well, it doesn't even have to be a neighbor. I can hear the wreck from my house, and if it exceeds 50, well, that's not a good example, that's city property. Somebody's playing music and I can hear it in my house and it exceeds 50 dBA, and I'm just talking, then wherever that noise is originating from is in violation. Well, no, it's raucous or an amplified sound. So yeah, music.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, that actually is pretty simple.
Does that kind of simplify it, like I said?
If you take out, yeah, I mean, if we basically take out C1,
1 and 2.
1 and 2, and 3, because you're covering 3, you're just exempting 3 altogether, so you can take 3 out. I think you take out all of, you're replacing,
Well, you're keeping the 55 nighttime all noise.
Yeah, but do you care?
What?
If you're inside your house and it's 60 outside, do you care? 60 dB or 70 dB? If you're inside the house and it exceeds 50, that's when you care.
Or sitting on your porch.
No, it says in the house.
it's got to be
In adjacent
plainly
dwelling.
audible in your house.
Right.
Yes.
And
You're
I
50,
outside.
don't think it's in your, yeah.
No, you're right.
So it can be at 70 outside on your
Yes.
porch.
but if you
When y'all
cannot
walk
hear in your house,
inside,
Right.
yeah,
If you
you
can't
open
hear.
your windows,
Right.
of course, you're
Well, no, you can't, that doesn't count. That-
I think, yes, you're right, that it could be loud as long as you can't hear it inside. That-
Yeah, I really don't care what's outside. It's when I'm asleep or studying or,
50, I mean, I think 50 causes a problem based on the fact that it never gets,
That's,
well, you have a variable of 5.
But that's standing outside. You're talking about
No.
50 on your inside, right?
no.
Hear it inside, but
If you can
That's
hear
the
it
difference.
inside at all, so you are listening, you hear it at all, and it's above 50 outside, but, you know, around the sweetgrass, it's never
Okay.
below
yeah,
about
'cause,
55.
Paragraph B is an outside measurement, not an inside measurement.
Correct.
correct.
I'm thinking an inside measurement.
No, inside any dB, anything that's audible. It's gotta meet both though, so it's audible
So you
and,
really can't get rid of 1, 2, and 3.
Well, you can get rid of, yeah, you can get rid of 1, 2, and 3. You can't get rid of 4.
Well, now I think you're contrary, 55 or 50.
Again, 55 was all noise. 50 was music in particular.
but David, how do you,
How do you,
Inside.
so,
yeah. Only
so
measure
if your
music.
cicada, yeah, if you put your cicada at 55,
Okay, yeah,
and then you started playing noise, you started playing music
At 55.
at 55.
they go out and measure,
Well, hold
Actually
on.
play it at
They
50.
play at 45, the music, but then you add cicadas to 55.
if,
You can't measure it.
You can't measure it.
and you're
But you
probably
just
not gonna hear
can't
it inside your house, because when you go through the walls, it's not gonna carry.
But that, I mean, that would have the effect of, if there are cicadas out, you can't play music.
No, you play music, you just
You
can't.
can play music, you just can't play it over the noise, the level of the cicadas.
But if you put your cicadas on right now at 55,
Right.
and then you turned your music on at all, that would say you cannot play music. That's audible, I guess it would have the thing of being, then you're triggering to audible in the house.
Right.
But you can't play music at all. That,
It wouldn't be, you couldn't record it, because the cicadas would be louder than the music.
right,
Okay, so yes, you couldn't record
you
that.
couldn't have any music at all,
Hence,
but I guess you're getting back to the, should music be audible, you're going away from the decibel reading, and you might as well just have it say if it's plainly audible at all in your house.
No, the reason-
Again, yes, so this was, again, going back to what kind of the police chief was wanting is, then they have to come, the officer has to come into your house to validate that it's plainly audible, where they pull up to your house, go out to the meter, and he goes, I'm reading 55, I can hear the music, it's 55, then it's kind of saying that, yes, it's got the potential to be audible in the house at that point.
Yeah.
Depending upon if you have single or double pane windows.
And they're open or closed.
Right, or they're open or closed.
Uh,
But you could be playing music at 50 dB, 48, let's say 48 dB, and yes, the person who's got their windows open is going to hear it next door, but you can't be ticketed because you're below that 50 limit.
Why is number 1 not good for a residential at 70?
C1 on page 4?
C1, page 4, yes, 70 dBA. The hours, the daytime, residents, that's where the noise problems are. We can talk all day long about all the other stuff, but this is the core in my mind. And I don't see music as anything different, quite frankly. Again, just very simplistically, all noise. And if you're generating it at a level that, is over 70, is that,
During the day.
during the day, is that where we want to,
I think we were in agreement that is fine, yes.
okay. Then, but that would include music,
That would include music, or could include music, yes.
or raucous, and,
Yes, any noise.
yeah. And I guess I get confused with going to that next level for, okay, you've got it going, raucous or amplified music, it shall be unlawful for any person. So basically what this is doing in number 5 is if it's a bother to you inside your house.
So I think what the results of this is if we go back to 1, where it's now 70 and it used to be 60, this is a result of changing that to 70 now. We can almost, yes, you can probably take out that one other paragraph.
So you're saying take out 2?
No. What he's talking about, the daytime amplified music.
Number 6
Yes.
starts on page 6 and carries over to page 7. And I stop up here at 5, which is actually the nighttime. I have to keep reading.
Yes, the only thing that was providing was the
Okay.
extension of the hours. And if we don't care about that, you're absolutely right. Let's keep paragraph 1 and delete I think it's 6.
Number 6, yes. So number 5 is adding the nighttime, correct the hours. I'm not.
Hold on, Sandy. Are we agreeing to that? David,
I think so,
that number 1, that
Stays.
C1.
because we changed it to
covers-
70 dB, it covers the music, and we don't need to readdress that
So we can
separately.
delete bottom of page 6,
Yep.
number 6, and
Yes.
1 and 2. Is everybody agreeable to that?
What time is it? Yes.
Is this David getting worn down?
No, I'm actually,
If you increase it to 75, then, is that what you're saying?
no.
No,
We
leave it
said
at
70.
Okay.
I
leave it
was fine with
70.
70.
Okay.
I think we're fine.
We're just kind of taking out the plainly audible portion of it.
Got it.
But again, I'm not sure we really care during the daytime.
Okay.
Need to be reasonable,
Ask
but I think
those
that's
people who do 12-hour
reasonable.
shifts.
Huh?
Ask those people who do graveyard shifts.
Well,
Keep your windows closed.
Right, keep your windows closed.
so now where were you going from that?
Okay, so,
So now you're just down to nighttime, correct?
yeah, so now I read number 4, which is the evening time, again, this doesn't address, I can hear it, I'm next door and I can hear your radio inside my house.
Right. So at
And so
55
this one-
dB, there's a possibility that you will hear it inside your house fairly loud. Music in
55
particular.
Music at 55 dB.
Yes, at the
Probably will hear.
property line, if your bedroom's window is 10 feet from the property line, you're probably going to hear it in your bedroom too at 55. So that's where the second one came in, said the plainly audible and the 50.
Could we just say, like, after 11 o'clock, just turn your radios off?
I wish, wouldn't it make some, no music after?
Wear headphones, yeah.
10 o'clock at night, outside.
Well,
If you're
I think-
outside, you can't have,
I think was originally the intent, if you go to the intent of how the original ordinances were written, basically, noise
No noise
after
after
11's, boom.
I mean,
Loud.
but I can sit on my porch and turn my radio to, I can barely hear it, and my neighbor's not going to hear it, and I'm not going to disturb it. We're not saying you can't do that.
I mean,
I mean,
It's just saying, you probably have
Or you could
or to
just turn
say,
your
so we
speakers
leave,
inward.
we leave 4 as it is, and we add,
Well, that's the solution
you
right
cannot,
there.
we just add a prohibition of amplified music that's audible off your property.
Push it that way. Problem solved.
I'm gonna hang my hat on, I think number 4 covers it all at 55. There's distances here that's measured from the border, the guy's 10 feet away, and I just,
But to
I think
David's point,
we're-
you could be playing pretty loud music. That's surprising to me, looking at, I mean, again, back to the Sweetgrass, they're at 55 with just nothing going on.
yeah.
But I think
no,
you're
absolutely.
saying you could play, and I think you made the point, that if the cicadas are loud enough, you play music, you're hearing it.
you're going to hear the
You're gonna
music
hear the
over,
music.
like, again, if you're in your house and you can hear your outside sounds, and somebody's playing music at that same level, you're going to hear the music.
So why don't we
Oh.
add to number 4,
So there is another way
No
I've seen these
music.
done, I'll throw this one out, is typically I've seen them done in a chart where they have the levels, and they'll add in that tonal sounds, referred to as tonal sounds, which is music and voice, are 5 dB less than are reduced by 5 dB. And that's pretty common. And that kind of addresses, again, it's basically saying the same thing in a much simpler form.
music and loud voices. Now you get dropped.
The criteria is not 55, but it's 50. All the hours are the same.
so drop it to 50, even though, drop tonal sounds to
Tonal
50.
sounds by
So-
5 dB from your requirements.
In
So
number,
like that would be
number
4 point A.
So
would be-
4 goes to 50
No,
for tonal sounds, or it stays at
yes.
55 and then says, stays at 55, but then there's an additional
Subset.
sentence that says 50
For tonal
tonal
sounds.
sounds.
I've seen it written that way.
I still,
That includes music, voice.
so David, if that graph is showing us that in the middle of the night it's 55 with no music, nothing going on, and you have a tonal sound, how do you, that's lower than that, you can't measure that because the ambient noise is more than 55, or it's at 55 every night.
If it's at 55, you're not going to hear it inside the house over the back. I mean, I go back to the way we kind of had written it, the plainly audible inside your house being the criteria. Again, the 50 was only to protect somebody that's actually having a quiet conversation on their porch from being ticketed just because the neighbor has their windows open. That was the only reason for writing it the way I did was It was more for protection of the person making the noise, not to cause an enforcement issue. But using the 55 limit, if that's our criteria, people are going to be able to hear that inside their house.
Yeah, but your
Which is a-
distance, your walls, all the things that are gonna reduce it, probably gonna knock it down. I think we're splitting
I don't think
hairs.
we've ever gotten a complaint. I mean, again, 55 is what it is, 3 AM in the middle of the parking lot. Well, middle of Palm Boulevard.
You're focusing on one particular location
But
of
we
the
would never
island.
we would never get a noise complaint.
We don't
If
get
it was-
noise complaints at night from residents on the island that I
Not
can
if
hear
it's,
music?
not if it's 55 dBH.
How do we know? We've never measured it, have we?
That's true, I can actually.
But I mean, if it's 55, just showing up, I guess you're saying it could be 55 and there could be chatter that's not coming above the ambient sound, and that's an
Right.
annoyance.
Again, what we see from Sweetgrass, yes, but this is applying to all residential neighborhoods. And if we have
And
an
you're saying you
ambient,
get 40s, you're
If we're-
picking up 40s in your backyard, so 55 would be pretty loud.
pretty loud, and I would be able to hear it inside my house. Even if it was at 50, I could probably still hear it inside my house.
So why don't we say after 10 during the week and 11, you can't make any raucous, you can't have any amplified music or any raucous sounds that are audible off your property or audible when measured
Beyond
at the
50
complainant's
dB.
property line. So it's the middle of the night, you need to be quiet.
But we can say that.
No, you couldn't measure
It's
it.
kind of what I think our
Ambient
current
sounds.
ordinance kind of says.
Say that again?
Yeah, right?
So, quiet hours, it's 55, and you cannot have any audible amplified, back to this, you
Raucous
can't
and
have raucous
amplified.
or amplified sound at all. That's audible at your property,
Yeah, between whatever the hours are.
after quiet hours.
Right.
So if you're being raucous or you're amplifying your music and it's
Plainly audible and
plainly
adjacent.
audible at adjacent property at those hours, you gotta stop.
That's what our current ordinance says.
But we're putting in 55 as the limit.
So now.
We haven't
the-
gotten that. That's the add-on.
That's what the chief wants to be able to go and say,
Number 4 says
you're
55.
55 and you have amplified.
But what does he do when he goes and it's 50 and I can still hear it inside my house?
Yeah, that's not a problem.
Why is it not a problem?
He carries around earplugs and hands them out.
I mean, that kind of was the crux of this whole part of this subject is I can hear music playing from somewhere inside my house. The police come and say, I can't do anything. And then you're going to give them a DB reading that says 55 and it's 50, but I can still hear it inside my house.
I think at quiet times, I don't think they have the problems. I think they shut it down. I mean, I don't think they have the enforcement problem. You have the issue, but I think the cops show up and they say, hey, it's quiet, hours, you have to shut it down. And they shut it down. The problem is it's
But
10
the-
at night and there's a band playing and it says you can have a reasonable level of noise at this time. I think once it gets in the middle of the night and they show up, I don't think that's when they have the problem.
I agree with you. But
That's not the ordinance problem that we're trying to solve.
But we're trying to solve a problem for 17 complaints. There's only been 17 noise complaints,
Well, I think that was in a month.
or was that just a month?
Yeah, that's it. Each
That's
month
like
in the
two.
summer, it's
That was 2 months.
That's for 2
Or
months.
2 months, yeah, that's not all year. I mean, that, we have a fair, we do have a fair I think we looked at this, Dave, right? A couple hundred maybe,
Yeah.
in the course of a year.
Okay.
But I think so that number, I don't think we're gonna solve really that number. We're gonna provide the tool to the police chief when they respond. And there's a discrepancy about, is this too loud or is it not? Right now, you have the officer's judgment and you have the complainant's judgment, and the two are not meshing. So this is gonna give them a number, a standard that defines what's, what's too loud and what's not. That's what it's gonna provide.
Well, it
I
gives
think
them, gives them the power to say, you've crossed the line, turn it down.
Right,
Or I'm gonna write you a ticket, or I don't like your attitude, I'm writing you a ticket, however they are at the moment for
Yeah.
what they're run into.
and when they show up and it's clearly too loud, they don't have a problem. Because the police officer says, yes, this is too loud, it's 3 a.m., they go and they shut it down and it handles the complaint. The problem is when they get a call and the officer shows up and he says, I think this is reasonable. Like, I can kind of hear something, but it's reasonable in my mind. That really irritates the person calling. So that's kind of the issue that we're trying to solve for, is when in the officer's judgment, it's reasonable. And this is gonna give that officer a kind of guardrail of what is, in a community standard, reasonable or not reasonable. But yeah, if they find it unreasonable, there was an example of, they continuously didn't turn it down. But generally, out of the couple hundred that they got called to, if the officer found it unreasonable, they were able to handle it.
Well, that and being able to justify in court the standard.
Right, and that's the
There
other,
is
I
no
mean,
standard.
there was a time that the chief talked about where the officer found it unreasonable, they wrote a ticket, and now, the lawyers and the courts are asking, well, in whose judgment was it unreasonable? So it helps that enforcement.
Yeah, if I'm hearing music from whatever source, and it's at the point where I'm gonna call, I guarantee you it's over 50 in my house if I'm calling 55 outside. So I think number 4 covers it in the evening hours, whether it's music or what have you. The alarm used to go off at the water station, half a block away from my house all the time. I called one of the water commissioners at 3 a.m. and said, would you come down here and turn this thing off? It's been going off for 3 hours. It started at midnight, by the way. Anyway, I digress. So we eliminate 6 with the wording
We
you're
eliminated
proposing.
6, I think.
We're still on nighttime, what to do?
I mean,
Yes.
eliminate 5 with the wording you're proposing.
By making a 4.1A,
Yep.
What's 4.1A?
that was
What
where.
Douglas said.
Well, that was 4.1, or 4, C4.A would be, the notion of the 50 decibels for audible noise, if we wanted to go there, but I don't even know if
So
that's
leave-
necessary.
So leave the night, so strike 5 on page 6, the nighttime, but add on page 5, number 4, 55 during the nighttime hours, and then add a qualifying sentence that says, provided that no amplified music or raucous sounds are allowed at that time.
Yeah, that's-
Like
that's
0.
better.
I'll look at how I've seen that written, but yes,
And I guess it would be 0 at the complainant's property. So back to you and at your wife talking and listening to a Bluetooth speaker, if the person can't hear, if it's not plainly audible at the complainant's property, if it's audible, they have to turn that off or turn it down. So, does that make sense? In those
Yeah, and I
nighttime
think it has
hours,
to be exceeding the ambient noise around. I mean, if,
Yeah.
you know, at nighttime, it's conceivably 45, maybe 50 is referenced here on the chart, with just ambient noise. Yeah, and I guess that's what David's addressing, is that, to that extent with the 50 that he's referencing in number 5. I was just trying to think how to simplify it to Douglas's point for a police officer out in the field. And at 55 at night, I think you're probably calling because it's more like 65 or 70. It could be that it's, you know, a little,
Well, like I said, again, it goes back to, like, you can hear the fog horn from Sullivan's Island
Yeah.
at the right time of day, or right time, under the right conditions.
right.
So the 55 is going to be, depending on the conditions, could be fairly loud inside a house.
Yeah.
And that was reason for trying to drop it down to 50. And again, the 55, because we're trying to catch all noise, there's going to be other ambient noises just in nature that are going to be up at that level.
so number 4, I think we add a sentence at the end of it. So we're gonna say 55 is the limit, and then we're gonna add on a sentence that says, provided that we're gonna use your amplified, or no raucous or amplified sound is allowed at all when measured, and we point back to the noise measurement that basically says at the complainant's property line.
I think I follow what you're saying, yes, it's getting
So
the
if
word.
Sandy, so if it's 55, and Sandy is listening to a Bluetooth speaker,
50, if he's listening to a speaker.
well, his Bluetooth speaker cannot be audible at the complainant's property at night. So this is midnight. He shouldn't be out on his porch with a Bluetooth speaker.
So we're getting rid of, okay, so you're getting rid of the
So it's
decibel
55,
limit.
no, it's 55.
No, it's still 55.
It's 55 for all that ambient noise
For all
stuff,
noise, yes.
provided that you can't have any raucous noise or amplified music audible at your neighbor's house at the nighttime hours. Friday night after 11.
Okay.
And that should get to some plainly audible, right? Plainly audible at the
At the property line.
at the proper.
Instead
at
of
the
inside the
complainant-
house.
Right.
That's actually probably more strict than what we have now.
On audible music, on
At night.
amplified raucous music at night, it's even tighter than we have now.
Okay, I was just making sure I was
Yeah,
following, that's what
yeah.
you were saying, yes. Is that, I'm fine with that,
Okay.
Turn your radios off.
yeah.
Nighttime,
Quiet hours.
yeah. I mean, I think that's kind of I think that's what we kind of think of, that turn your radios off at night. I think that's what,
Okay, I think we're,
We need a
I think we're done.
loudspeaker up
Wow.
on the top of the water tower, and it plays taps at 10:45.
Well, I might still be
Everybody
watching
down.
TV out on my porch at that time.
It's like the old TV, Star Spangled Banner.
That's right.
The reality is, though, that these instances are gonna happen when someone is out on the porch, or they're by the pool, or I'll tell you one that hit me the other night was, one of my neighbors was playing that cornhole game. And it was 11:15, and I could hear the,
yeah. So that would be,
they were having
that would
fun,
be
damn
the,
it.
That would be the
that'd be
ruckus.
raucous.
Yep.
That would be the
Yes,
ruckus.
I know.
So let me just make sure.
Yeah.
So we have the 70 dB commercial daytime, so, or 75,
70 dB residential,
70 residential daytime.
75
Number one.
commercial daytime,
Number two,
85 GC2,
Right,
because nobody lives around
55 at
them.
night, provided that you cannot have amplified music
at all, basically.
at all. If it,
What?
amplified music that's
It's
audible
audible.
at your neighbor's house, or raucous noise. After, nighttime hours. And I also kind of want, I mean, this, pushing it up to 7, like, I don't think you want cornhole and 70 dBH at 7:15 in the morning. Right? So I think do we go, if we
So
leave the nighttime, if we leave the nighttime hours to go till 10 a.m., I understand that naturally road traffic's gonna get it above 55. But we have the prohibition, general language of no raucous noise and music until 10 a.m. Isn't that reasonable?
I mean,
So you're gonna put that in there, in that sentence, at the end of the raucous noise?
No, that would be, we were gonna change the hours to go back from 7 a.m. to 10 a.m. So you
All
don't start
noise.
all the raucous noise until 10 a.m.
On the number one. I don't
Number
know where you're
four,
at.
number four, which is
Evening.
nighttime. Evening is now going all the way till 10 a.m.
Again, the reasoning that 55 is going to be,
Lawnmower?
huh?
Is that a lawnmower? I guess that would be,
I mean, the lawnmower's kind of covered under the maintenance, but
yeah.
running a boat engine, let me use that one. Flushing a boat engine.
What do you think?
I mean, 7
sounds
AM, you're
awfully-
letting your contractor go over there,
That's true. That's true. You can run you can run a saw.
run a
You can run a
saw.
skill saw, so
Why
I
can't I
guess-
play music if I'm going to allow that?
No, I think the two have to line up. I don't think you can.
So
you-
right now.
But you could say
Right now they don't, but
music.
David has suggested that they do here. That they
Well-
line up with basically contractors.
Do we line up with the contractor, make it 7:30, I think, which is what our contractor has always been, right?
7:30. Is that what it is?
7:30, which is where that number came from.
Okay, yeah, that's in here, I was circling that.
So do we make
for-
everything 7:30? I mean, I guess to follow that logic, I think the logic has been, my neighbor is gonna build a house, and it's gonna take him 8 months, and I'm gonna
Here.
deal with it that early for 8 months. I would rather do that than an establishment that just starts their music at 7:30 a.m. That a construction project is a little bit more of an exception,
So
a short-term.
turn
pain.
that around, why not in your number 5? No raucous or amplified noise from 10 to 10. And then you can leave all the rest of the noise for the construction, and I'm thinking the city starts at 7.
Yeah.
The recycling at 7, the contractors are up and out at 7,
Yeah.
getting set and ready to go. I don't want to change any
Number
of that.
deliveries.
So what you're saying,
Yes.
so number 4 right now is nighttime hours. Are you
But-
saying add number 5?
No,
Or are you
well,
saying number 4?
I'm saying you add it to no raucous and amplified noises, et cetera, between the hours of 10 and 10.
10 and 10.
Yeah. Is that too complicated? Not, it's just,
Are you saying
It's
just
just
change the
specific.
hours of number 4? You said 5, I think. Are you thinking number 4?
I'm sorry, number 4.
Yes, that's where I was going.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
The,
But
But
the
it's a
issue with
rock.
that is all your other noises other than music are going to be now in violation.
No, it's only raucous and amplified noise, but specifically music. Everything else can go on from 7 to 10 PM
So
as
kind of
per our other
lawnmowers
ordinances.
So pull out another paragraph and, but put it after
We're putting
4.
it-
That same
We're putting it at nighttime.
we would just be saying a lawnmower is not a raucous noise.
think that's excluded in the,
It's already excluded.
well, maintenance, where is it?
That was
Number 6 on page 8, it shall be lawful for an owner, maintenance, et cetera, yeah.
Well, that's just an owner. That's just, number 6 is specifically an owner,
But not,
but not like the city's leaf blower.
All right, we'll broaden it. Again, keep it, I'm more concerned about the music, and that's where I think the headache comes from.
All right, we're down to a, how do we get
How do we-
routine music, routine kind of maintenance type noise excluded from an otherwise 10 to 10?
So I think it's more, at this point, we're more into a formatting issue.
Yes.
And again, whether we add it as 1, 2, 3, 4, 5,
Add a 5 that says.
and get rid of all this other, I guess the pets, the hawking, the peddling would be 6, 7, 8, and not be its own separate paragraph. I did not really figure out why it was done that way. That's, again, a formatting. I follow what you're saying.
Yeah.
It becomes a formatting thing at this issue. The only things, the other things are just, because I know it's getting late. I think we addressed that. Oh, on the bottom of page 7, this was just,
Yeah, the power equipment must be indoors during the,
I saw that in other ordinances. It made sense to me that.
The blue
because-
text?
Huh?
The blue
The
text?
blue text of having the construction next door to me set their compressor right by my dining room window every day. So they don't have to hear it inside where they're working. I thought it made sense. Was there any objection to leaving it?
No, I think that makes sense.
20
Is
feet
that
is a
all-
little problematic.
do you want lawful or unlawful on that one?
That one,
Station-
it was supposed to be, it's lawful
All right,
to operate between those hours. That was because of the way we changed it, the old one. It's an exception. So now it is an exception for them to be able to make noise over 70 dB during those hours.
What about somebody working, I mean, your house can be as close as 10 feet.
Right. And a cider might have his.
And you have
It says
like
stationary. You're not going to set
a station, so that's not a skill saw, that's
no,
not, yeah,
it's
okay.
a stationary. Compressors, table saws, miter saws.
So you might have to
Those are
set that, you might have to set
They're
that 10
operated in a
feet.
stationary position. I copied this from somebody else.
So, a cider is working on the side of your house within the 10-foot setback.
he's got.
He's
his
not gonna wanna
compressor.
walk around the house to cut a board. He's gonna want his chop saw, which is miter saw, table saw.
That's the problem.
That's the
That's-
problem. Why should he not be inconvenienced instead of me being inconvenienced?
I will say though,
It's
David,
the reality.
That's,
but you're also
He's gonna do
Oh,
back
it
to the
until
kind
he-
of
until somebody says something, but
Chasing
pain of
after his green
construction,
card.
and we deal with this with working at night, where we think, we kind of talk about, we can either allow it to go for 24 hours a day for 3 days, or we can hold it to a much less, we can hold it to 8 hours, but it's gonna go now for
2
10
weeks.
days,
Yeah.
2 weeks.
Yeah.
And it's kind of like, you know what, just get it done as efficiently and as quickly as you can.
yeah.
A little more painful, but could be problematic. If they're in the middle of a 70-foot long house and they now have to go all the way down the house, around, inside something to make a cut, and then instead of it just being right there.
Or they'll have to yell the dimension to the guy, the cut
That
guy
cuts it
inside
out.
the house. So
I think
he's
that might
yelling
just be,
then
they're
all
only
of a
gonna
sudden.
reside the house next to you
Once,
every 30
and
years.
by the time you complain, they'll be done. But again, this was more, again, I saw it
I could
in
see how that
other,
would be annoying.
Yeah.
in other ordinances, and again, every time I've walked out there and asked them if they could move it, they would do it. But it's just kind of like,
Now, something like
What
a compressor is more problematic than any of those saws.
yeah.
Because the saws don't operate long enough for anybody to get a meter reading. They're not going to be operating for 30 seconds.
But they show
But
they're there
but
all
the
day.
compressor,
Ring,
Yeah.
ring.
yeah, well, yeah.
Yeah.
Again, I didn't, I thought I'd throw it out if there was any really hard egg.
But the
I'll
compressor
more than
is-
happy to take it back out. It was just hit me as, it makes sense. Why not?
Could we take it out for now? Revisit it later? I don't think, I have a problem with it, and it goes to the efficiency of a contractor, the timing factor. If they're having to move, they're having to walk around to get to a chop saw, to get to a table saw, to do, something, it extends the job and effectively extends the agony, and it may be, much to Ron's point, they're start yelling now. What'd you say? I can't hear you.
Or something like that.
I guess it ultimately has the effect of
Yeah.
adding time, which
Prolonging the agony.
time to the
On a
project.
And the nail
adds to
guns
the
are going to be
expense.
louder and more aggravating anyway.
All right, I think take it out, David.
Okay, like I said, I was kind of like, I thought it was worth throwing up for discussion.
First I read it, it made
Compressor,
sense.
sure, but, well, I got nervous right away with the 20 feet, just because.
Was it a
I did-
compressor that was a
Yes.
problem? Or was it was probably a saw? wasn't it?
Compressor or generator. I mean,
Yeah.
and again, when I've said something to them, they've generally moved it, but it's just kind of one of those things of, should it be clear in our ordinance, that's a reasonable accommodation.
How about you leave compressor and generator in there?
Yeah.
Those are, you just run
fine,
lines from those.
'cause you
That
get-
is just a laziness. I mean, the saw, you're actually working
Saw is-
on throughout the
yeah,
day.
But the others can be moved away, and they are more aggravatingly annoying. I
Yeah,
think of
leave it.
roofers that bring their own power. that,
Amend it
you know,
to generators
And
and
compressors.
compressors.
Yeah.
Construction generator.
Yeah, portable
Specific.
generators, because there are
Yes.
permanent
Yeah.
generators that are,
Yes,
depending upon where you live, they might be within 20 feet.
that's
of
right.
Another home.
Portable compressors and generators.
What should we say, portable?
Okay.
Construction generator, so that.
All right.
when
Anyway,
Eco comes
I think that
and
was,
There you go.
You bring out your generator, your,
Can we
Yeah, but you can
polish,
still run cords.
can we say that your work is done here for tonight?
I think
Yeah.
so.
You don't want to talk about the stormwater drainage?
No,
Oh, I
it's been
got
the way it
right
is
here.
for a while.
All
Just
right.
trying to look-
David, I've
Fingers
written
crossed,
notes.
are we
You have
close?
notes?
Huh?
You want to take a stab at
I'll take a
edits?
stab at cleaning
Okay.
some of that up and getting it reformatted. I guess council had given us 60 days or whatever. So do we want to?
You want to try to,
One more month? I think, are we
I
that,
think-
do we feel like we're that close that we actually will have it?
I think at next meeting, I think that sounds like you all would have it, right?
I think so.
Yeah, I think that's good.
So,
And then with any edits, we'll just do it by hand.
Hashed it out pretty good.
I think we're good.
I think the only other change I saw was moving the motor vehicle thing into the exception instead of,
Yeah.
which is,
And we will hold comp plan and drain, stormwater till November.
Does someone want to make a motion to defer those, just to be picky?
I make a motion to defer the comprehensive plan and the stormwater plan till the November meeting.
Cool.
second?
Motion and a second, all in favor?
All right.
Any opposed? Unanimous?
Last thing, Ron.
Anybody want to make the next thing?
A motion to adjourn.
There you go.
I
Do we have a
motion-
second?
Second.
All in favor?
Off record.
Any opposed?
7